Chris Hall is CBC's National Affairs editor. He joins me from Ottawa. And Chris, we've heard Stephen Harper and the Conservative Party talking about the long gun registry. How important an issue is that really in this campaign?
Oh, I think it has enormous potential for the Conservatives, Harry, largely because look at where he made the announcement. It was in Welland, Ontario, a riding held by the NDP, one of the NDP MPs who had publicly said he would support Candace Hepner's private member's bill to scrap the registry, and then flipped his vote and voted against it. There were 14 opposition members who did that, and the Conservatives vowed at the time that they would go after them and raise that as an issue in this election campaign, and that's what they've done. They're primarily rural areas. Northern Ontario, places like Welland. The Conservatives believe that could be a big issue. And from the Liberal standpoint, I mean, they have obviously stood behind it, same with the NDP, but it's clear that for some of them, there are ridings where the gun registry is an irritant, and they have to try to manage that in this campaign going ahead. So in the past, it hasn't flipped votes. It hasn't been seen by me and others who have followed the election campaigns to be that much of a vote decider. But this time around, there's a bit more energy involved in the Conservatives' efforts, targeting those particular MPs who had said one thing publicly and ultimately voted the different way.
And I was going to strike on that because there is the appearance that this in many ways is a much more strategic election campaign focusing on specific ridings that are potential flip ridings right across the country. The leaders' attentions appear far more targeted than they have in past elections.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with you, especially starting this in the second week of the campaign. The NDP leader, Jack Layton, for example, in a riding like Winnipeg North that the NDP had held for a long time, lost to the Liberals in a by-election. He's doing his entire day in that riding in an effort to win it back. I think the same is true in places around Toronto, in St. John's area, where St. John's South Mount Pearl, held by the Liberals, the Conservatives want back. This is all about trying to get a majority if you're the Conservatives, and you only need really to flip 12 seats to do that. And it's also about trying, if you're the Liberals and the NDP, to prevent vote splitting and strategic voting that might end up seeing, in particular, the NDP on the losing end of that kind of position if it looks like the Liberals might be the party that electors want to use to defeat the Conservatives.
Certainly the focus of Michael Ignatieff and the Liberals has been on the NDP near left and trying to win back some of that ground. But they also released their policy platform over the weekend. Chris, has there been any sense of a bump for the Liberals after doing that? Has that benefited them?
I haven't seen an obvious bump yet, Harry, in terms of the tracking polls and the like, but clearly it has energized the Liberal campaign and people around them. There wasn't a lot of surprise in it. It was really focused, as you said, on those sort of soft center voters who might lean to the NDP, with lots of programs to deal with helping families deal with a sick loved one or getting their children through university. So a real gamble, I think, in some sense, to have released it so early. But on the other hand, it's really now clear where the Liberals stand, and the campaign is much better organized than it was in 2008.
How about Jack Layton? You mentioned him. Are we expecting to see more of their platform, their party platform, in the coming couple of days?
Yeah, absolutely. They're rolling out the last few planks of what they're promising. And I think one of the big challenges for Jack Layton is that while they are not the same, the NDP is hitting on many of the same issues that Michael Ignatieff has already laid out in the Liberal platform. So it will be interesting to see how those two parties in particular appeal to their core voters and how they try to distinguish themselves from each other, given that the platforms are dealing with many of the same issues, if not exactly the same in focus.
We're just reaching the midway point of the second week of this campaign, Chris. What can we expect to see over the coming 3 or 4 days?
Well, I think that what you'll see is, for the Conservatives in particular, a real focus on those ridings around Toronto, the so-called 905 area code ridings. I think you'll see the Liberals and the NDP going into a lot of each other's ridings, trying to hold on to their core support. And of course, we're all waiting as we head into this weekend for the debates, which come early next week, earlier than normal in a campaign, to see how the parties position themselves in anticipation of that.
There'll be certainly something to watch there. Listen, Chris, always good to talk to you. Thanks very much.
My pleasure, Harry. Thank you.
Chris Hall is CBC's National Affairs editor. I spoke with him from Ottawa.